Good evening, everyone. I am Chris. It is Friday, and that can mean only one thing. We're back for more Rings of Power. This is episode 4. We are halfway through this series now, thank Christ. Up to episode 4, The Great Wave. And let me tell you, I wish a great wave would just come and sweep this whole show away. We've only got 4 more weeks, but you know what? The show may be bad, but one thing that I do enjoy and I do look forward to every Friday is chatting all about Tolkien, all about the Rings of Power, all about the Lord of the Rings with such excellent and admirable people. So hopefully we get some people in the chat tonight. We get a conversation going again, as always. We've got Carl already. How are we doing, man? I haven't forgotten about your message. I have read your message, by the way, on Twitter. I will get to you when I can. My free time has just been pretty much non-existent the last couple of days. I will get a reply to you. I do promise that. Hopefully we get some more people in as well. As I say, this is like one of the highlights of my week. I love talking about Lord of the Rings. I love tearing down the Rings of Power. I will give credit to it where credit is due, and ever so slightly, I do have a couple of positives from today's episode. Not many, but some. So I'm fair. It takes two to tango, doesn't it? While we're waiting for some people to come in, let's do the housekeeping. So please do consider subscribing to the channel for more reviews, discussions, and live streams. There's going to be even more content next week because, you know what? I want to apologize to you guys. When Kenobi came out, I could have very easily covered Kenobi on the channel, and I would have had a lot to have say about it. I would have had so much to say about Kenobi. But I was kind of burnt out by Star Wars, and part of me just really didn't want to watch Kenobi. When it came out, I really didn't want to watch it. And then as the weeks went by, I kept thinking, like, oh, should I do a review on it? Will anyone tune in? Will anyone want to see it? And eventually, obviously, I didn't do a review on Kenobi. And I've seen all the main bits from Kenobi. I've seen reviews on it, and that's as much as I need to see because it looked terrible. But next week sees the release of a new Disney Plus Star Wars TV show. I believe it's on Wednesday the 21st, I think it is, if I've got the date right. We've got Andor, the infinitely memorable character from Rogue One. Cassian Andor is getting his own spin-off series, and I'm going to review it. So if it comes out on Wednesday, I'll be streaming again on Wednesday. So you'll find me Tuesdays for Bond, Wednesdays for Andor, and Fridays for the Rings of Power. So you're going to get 3 videos a week of me. How does that sound? But I think the time is now to start talking about Star Wars some more next week. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Today, Rings of Power. Let's get it done. If you subscribe to the channel as well, do give me a follow on Twitter. There I'll post all the times, especially with all this new content that I've got coming out and all the content that I've got planned for the rest of the year and into next year as well. I have been discussing with someone who's collaborated with me on a review already about a massive series of videos that we're going to be starting from January next year. So it's going to be really exciting. Loads of content planned for the rest of the year. So do give me a follow there. As I say, I post all the times that I go live and everything that you can expect. And while we're talking about the Rings of Power, I want to hand over to you as well, because I have to do a lot of talking on this thing. I have to do so much talking, but, you know, it's a whole community, this is. Those subscribers are going up nicely, and hopefully more people join and, discover me through these videos as well. So let me know what you think of the Rings of Power. Would you say that today's episode was the best we've had so far, or is it just as bad as all the other ones? I'm really, really curious to hear your guys' opinion on this one. I've had some great comments in the week gone since the last video. Someone actually quoting extracts from the appendices at me and Tolkien, like text and everything, which is great because, I'm not a Tolkien scholar. I always do have to open with this so that people are aware, because I know what hardcore Tolkien fans are like, and I should know because I'm one of them. I am not a Tolkien aficionado. I can hold my own. I know the broad strokes of stuff, but the fine details of dates and events and like the vast wealth of character names and family tree history, that's the stuff I struggle on. So I know some stuff, but I don't know. SeaWorld Man says angle back where I had it. What was it like there? Or there you get the sword. I will say, I think I mentioned this last week, actually. I've got all my swords on my wall now. And actually, this is, I may as well mention this right now. I'll be going live this Sunday as well for an exciting new unboxing. I'm going to be picking up a new sword. It's a Hobbit sword, I will say that. So I've broken my rule of only collecting the Lord of the Rings stuff. I will be buying a Hobbit sword. It's just so nice. It's just one of my favorite swords, and I know it's from the Hobbit, and I know I'm not big on collecting stuff from the Hobbit as much as Lord of the Rings, but it's nice. It's very, very nice, and it has been opened before, but there's some parts of the sword that I'm buying where the original owner hasn't opened it before. So I'm going to be doing another unboxing. I did an unboxing video on my Gandalf staff. The Gandalf the Grey staff with the pipe and everything. I did an unboxing. You can find that on my channel. But we're going to be doing another one. So if you guys are down, again, I'll post on my Twitter when I'm going to go live for that. But I love doing the unboxings, and I love getting more swords. I want to try and get the whole collection if I can. It'll be great. So yeah, if you want to watch me geek out over a Lord of the Rings collectible, tune in on Sunday. We've got Will, Lord Oakenshield himself, which is quite fitting, actually, because we've got a lot of dwarves back in this episode, haven't we? Which I'm sure we'll be discussing. My Melon, this series fucking sucks. You know, Will doesn't mince his words. I appreciate that. I appreciate that about Will. My opinion didn't change, although I really like the visuals of Numenor, and Elendil looks really cool. Yeah, I've been seeing that as well. Elendil's probably the only character who's... I mean, the dude's meant to be like 7'11" or something, isn't he? I think in the book, or like he's definitely 7 foot something. The men of Numenor are meant to be really tall. They're meant to be tall. They're meant to be stocky, well built. Think Arnold Schwarzenegger back in his prime, but just make him 7 feet tall. Make him like Ivan Drago. They're meant to look like Ivan Drago, but with beards and long hair. That's the build that they should have. Now, granted, I know that Elendil didn't have that build in the Lord of the Rings film, so I'm inclined to allow some wiggle room with that. But yeah, the actor of Elendil's really fucking decent so far. Actually, he's probably my favorite. I'd say him and Prince Durin are my favorite. If I had to pick a favorite, if you put a gun to my head and say pick a favorite character from this show, I actually quite like King Durin as well. We haven't really had loads of scenes from him, but I think the actor and the makeup's actually really good on him. And he's the only character that feels like he could have been in one of the Lord of the Rings films, maybe. Will also says it's probably because Alan Lee and John Howe work on this series. That's why some visuals are really cool. Yeah, I just don't know why some visuals are cool and some just really aren't. Like, some you'd expect with those two people on board that everything about it would look fresh out of the Peter Jackson films, or even the Hobbit ones, you know, the same conceptual designers, but a lot of it really doesn't. Even Numenor, and you know, I'd say Numenor's probably the most impressive vista in the whole series, maybe followed by Khazad-dûm perhaps, but even that doesn't feel like the Numenor that they would have done for the Lord of the Rings films. I think they would have gone with something really different. This feels, as I mentioned last time, it feels quite Mediterranean. It's got some Roman influences in there for sure. A lot of Greek. Yeah, so it's kind of like a hodgepodge, but I mean, I don't dislike it. I think, you know, in terms of the visuals, the actual landscapes look pretty cool, especially Numenor. You can tell where the budget went on all of that. It's just a shame that they didn't have any budget left over for the costume design, because the costume design still really, really bothers me. But anyway, I have notes, and we're going to go through it. Did I have as many notes as last time? I'm not sure. We'll find out. We'll see how long this video goes on for, because I'm 10 minutes in and I haven't even started talking about the episode properly just yet. Seaward Man says, have my camera positioned differently, which is dope. Is this good? Is this good? Or do you want it like that? I'm going to leave it like that for now, because Fellowship of the Ring needs some love, because that's my favorite Lord of the Rings film right there. Okay. Episode 4, The Great Wave. We begin the episode with, and I've put Blessing of the Children, ? And like a really confused face. Yeah, so apparently Tar Miriel, or Queen Miriel, sorry. Queen Miriel is she's at some kind of like baby shower, and it's this whole ceremony thing they do for all the newborns of Numenor. They gather at this tower, and I mean, it's all moms. There's no fathers here. No guys are allowed in this room. It's, you know, # female empowerment. so you got her and all these mums and with their babies. I don't know if they were all daughters. I don't know if that was the whole thing. I don't know if it was, you know, like the sacred feminine or something only allowed in at this place. And then you've got the great wave that crests over the city and starts destroying it, which is of course the downfall of Numenor. Now, I'll say this because I made a note about this, and I'm interested to hear your guys' opinion on this. I've put, now that we've already been shown a shot of the Great Wave, do you think that will take away from the surprise of that happening? I mean, I know the people that have like read Tolkien's works and know the story of Numenor and know what happens. It's not really going to be a surprise anyway because we know that that happens. But for casual moviegoers, I mean, I get the whole concept of foreshadowing in films, and, you know, Lord of the Rings has a lot of foreshadowing and visions and, you know, things like that, but they've actually straight up showed the shots of the tidal wave coming over the city. Now, granted, when it actually happens, I'm sure it'll be a lot more visually impressive, and we'll see the city actually crumbling, and, you know, it'll be more involved, but I don't know. Do you think it works as a kind of vision at this point, or do you think it's almost like they've blown their load already by showing that? I feel like they could have hinted at that without actually showing the wave. Maybe just showed the reaction shots. Think like Steven Spielberg from Jurassic Park when they first look at the Brachiosaurus, and before we actually get that reveal of it, we just get all like the shocked expressions on people's faces. I don't know. Maybe just seeing petals from the tree fall, and, you know, the leaves, the white tree may be completely bare. We could have seen seagulls maybe kind of like migrating away from it or something, or like a shadow cresting over the city and not actually see the wave. I don't know. Maybe I'm just nitpicking with that, but I just feel like actually seeing the shot of the wave, and we see it twice this episode. We get it twice. We get it with Queen Miriel's or Queen Regent Miriel, because we do actually see the King of Numenor in this one. I'll get onto him in just a second. We see the same vision twice, because we get it with Miriel and then we get it with Galadriel when she looks into the Palantir, which I thought was a seeing stone where you can communicate with someone, but apparently now it's just a vessel where you can see visions. And I don't know if that was always in the lore. I might be forgetting that. As far as I remember from the lore, you have to stare into the Palantir. This is more in the books than it is in the films. I think the films, they do something different. You have to stare into the Palantir, and you have to be facing in the geographical direction of the next seeing stone that you want to communicate with. As far as I know, it was basically like a magic Skype device, really, or like a Zoom call, because Denethor had one which is hinted at in the movies but never really developed, but it's really developed in the book, and you can maybe argue that's the reason that he went completely nuts and, you know, just gave up, you know, the futility of war and everything, and just turned his back on everything. He was in direct communication with Sauron. I'm pretty sure as well in the book that Saruman has one as well, and Saruman was in communication with Sauron. I think. I don't know if that was just an addition to the movies. It's been a while since I've read the books, guys. But yeah, now it's just kind of... It's almost like the mirror of Galadriel. You know, things that were, things that are, and some things that have not yet come to pass. It feels like it's just a vision device now. But I guess I can't be too mad at that, because I know that there was going to be a deleted scene from the Hobbit movies where Gandalf goes to Dol Guldur, and you can actually find the footage of this as well. And there's a Palantir in Dol Guldur, and originally the concept was that Gandalf goes up to it, touches it, and he gets a vision of Smaug leading the orc armies against Dale and just Middle Earth in general, and laying waste to it. So I guess I can't be too mad at this, because maybe that has always been a thing where the Palantir can show visions. But yeah, I just wanted to get your guys' opinion on that. Do you think it will take away from the actual event when it happens? If we get to that, if we get that far, if we get a season 2, if we get a season 3 and 4 and 5, because this show really isn't doing well, despite what Amazon may want you to think, and the reviews that it hides, the accounts that it blocks, and the straight up lies and statistics that it's posting. This show isn't doing well. And from what I've heard, and, you know, on other channels and everything, behind the scenes at Amazon, it's not good at the moment. They're, I think people are out for blood behind the scenes with this show, so we'll have to wait and see. Seawood Man says hitting 100 subs pretty fast, not bad. Yeah, no, I'm surprised by that too. So yeah, thank you to everyone that has hit the subscribe button. As I said, lots more content to come, and yeah, we're rebuilding, aren't we? We're rebuilding the community, and I'm loving it so far. Yeah, it's great. So again, thank you to everyone that has subbed, but we're not quite at 100 yet. So let's get those subscribers up. Let's get to triple digits. It'll be cool. Because I think once I get to 100, actually, I'll have the community page on my channel, like the about section, I think, where we can actually chat back and forth on there, which could be really, really cool. And I can post updates on there as well. Which reminds me, actually, I really need to do some TLC on the actual channel itself, because I completely forgot I don't have any cover art. Or on my Twitter. It's completely bare. So, yeah, I need to take a free day and edit up some pictures and get it on there. But we can get to that. I do have a new chair. Yeah, it's blue. My friend very, very kindly agreed to come and help me completely rearrange my room, get all of my weapons on the wall. I really wish this wall was behind me, because I'm loving this collection. I'm loving this collection. I'm tooting my own horn right now, but this collection of United cutlery that I've got is just amazing. I just look up at it with pride. It just feels like, it brings me closer to the movies a little bit. It sounds really, really poncy, but, just getting one of those swords, and it's not the actual sword from the film, and it's they're stainless steel, they're well made, they're well crafted, but I don't know, it's that, like, when you then go back and watch the films, I had this with the Witch King's sword, which I've got right there in front of me. When he draws it in the film, I'm looking at it in the detail, I'm like, oh my god, I've got that sword, like that's that sword right there. So, and speaking of swords, actually, there is a cameo from a very famous sword in the Palantir scene in this episode today, which we'll get onto later on when I get to that scene. Okay, so then we cut to the streets, and the streets. It sounds like downtown Detroit, doesn't it, or something? And we've got our Farazan, who's just kind of walking through the market town with his son. Now, I think his son's called Kemen, but I misheard it when I was watching the episode today, and I thought he said that his son was called Kevin. I've got my note here now. I didn't correct it either. In capital letters, I've got Kevin ? I thought, like, what kind of a fucking name is that in Middle Earth? I mean, I know you've got names like Sam, which is a very conventional name, or well, his name is actually Samwise, isn't it? So maybe not so common, but I don't know. I thought Kevin. I thought that's a weird name to have in a fantasy thing. And then I remembered in Game of Thrones, Tywin Lannister's brother's called Kevin, but it's like Kevan. And I'm like, even when I was reading the books and he was like Uncle Kevin, I thought that's it's a little bit strange. But no, it's Kemen. Completely original character created for this show. Our Farazan didn't have a son, didn't have a documented son, and again, it's just a case of where Amazon go, well, Tolkien didn't specifically write this, so it could have happened. No, and I think, sort of subtext wise, I think our Farazan not having a son actually has some carryover into the decline of Numenor itself, and that they weren't really focused on rebirth or, the continuation of their lineage. They were very self-centered. They were looking to preserve their own lives. I think there's a whole, in the extended edition of the Return of the King film, where Gandalf the White's talking to Pippin, and he's kind of giving him a history of Gondor and Numenor itself. And he says that they focus so much on their own mortality and their tombs and everything that they didn't really care for the consideration and the upkeep of their own city, and it just, went into downfall. So I think our Farazan not having an heir shows, I'm not going to say shows how self-centered he is, because then you could make the argument, oh, well, people that choose not to have children are very selfish. I don't mean that at all, but he's more preoccupied with, his conquest of Middle-earth and everything like that he never even considered, having an heir or anything like that to carry on his legacy, because he wanted this just like infinite dynasty. He wanted to live forever, which is exactly why he wages war against the Valar, because they won't allow them passage into the Undying Lands, and they want some of that never-ending life. They want some of that immortality. They've got a little bit of it. They've got super long life. They can live for a couple of 100 years, but they can't live forever, and that's exactly what he wants. So I don't know. It's a side thing. I don't know why they've given him a son, to be honest. It just seems completely pointless. Then we've got Guy who's publicly speaking against the elves. And once again, the costume design for all the inhabitants of Numenor just looks absolutely terrible, in my opinion. It looks like costumes they've got lying around from a theatre production of, like, an amateur dramatic production of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat or something like that. The costumes just look really fucking bad. And nothing about them screams Numenor to me in the slightest. But if I remember rightly, and again, like, maybe someone can correct me on this if I'm wrong, the guy who's publicly speaking against the elves, he's being like super fucking racist to the elves. He's just like, we don't want their kind here, and those elves coming into Numenor and taking our jobs, and taking our jobs and our women and acting like they own the feckin' place. I think that guy who's doing the public speaking wasn't he one of the guys that Halbrand just completely caved the head of in the last episode? I think he was one of the guys that was picking a fight with Sauron. And I know that Sauron just like broke one of their arms, and then he grabbed this guy's face and just like fucking shoved it into a wall, and like you could see the blood stain on, and it was a stone wall as well. That guy is dead. But apparently not, because I think it's the same guy who's doing the public speaking in the town, and he seems absolutely fine. He's got like a couple of scratches on his face, I think. He's got like a black eye or something, but dude looked absolutely fine. So, yeah, I don't know. That was weird to me. And then our Farazan just shows up, and he's, trying to win over the people, and I get that they've got 5 seasons of this shit, and maybe they want to try and ramp up to our Farazan becoming evil and trying to seize ultimate control, but I don't know. We don't really get that. I don't really get the sense that, like, is he trying to just curry favor with the people for his own ends? Because he's a chancellor, isn't he? He's Chancellor Farazan at this point. So, but we get no sense of like political drama or anything like that. We never actually see him in the Senate. We never see him in office or anything like that. So, is he just trying to curry favor with like the common folk, and so he can push his own agendas or get their respect, so that when he does, if they do this, because I mean, I'm going by the law. I'm going by what's written by Tolkien here, and the show clearly hasn't, so they could be going completely in a different direction. But surely they've got to get to the point where Ar-Pharazôn becomes king and is this tyrannical ruler. Are they planting the seeds now where he's trying to curry favor with the inhabitants of Numenor so that he has support for when he assumes the throne? I don't know. Okay, then we get to like actually talking about like Halbrand, and I'm trying to remember where these quotes come from. I should have written who was saying these things. I can't remember if it's Galadriel in the jail cell talking to Halbrand at this point, or if I think she might be talking to Queen Miriel at this point. And the terminology that they're using for Halbrand, because they're clearly trying to frame him as this new Aragorn character. He's got the long hair, he's rugged, he's a good-looking guy. That they're really pushing this heroic stance on him. The fact that he was once like a leader of people, and his lands have fallen into disrepair, and he's got this, heritage that once sided with Morgoth, and he's ashamed by that, and he's trying to move on and trying to be better. It's exactly like Aragorn, who has this troubled past, whose ancestors failed him. Isildur was fallible and didn't destroy the ring, and all of these things, and is ashamed of his bloodline, and he doesn't feel like he can live up to it, and he doubts himself, and that really works for Aragorn in the movies. It's a very different depiction from Aragorn in the books. I think I mentioned that last time. Aragorn in the books is very confident, he's very self-assured, he knows that he's kingly, and he's proud of what he will become. He wants to become king, and he's just waiting for his chance. Whereas in the movies, they wanted to give him, I don't want to say more substance, it's just a very different way of doing it. But I think for a movie and for a trilogy of films, you need more of a character arc there. You need more character development for him. And you do that by having him become king by the end of the film and have him be unsure of himself. And that works for that film. But they're trying to put the same traits onto Halbrand because they're going to try and do a bait and switch. It's going to be a subversion of expectations. It's rejecting traditional storytelling. Sauron is just evil. I guess if you really wanted to read into it, you could say that, like his master, he just wanted order. He just wanted autonomy. He wanted the ability to create, and he wasn't given that option, and he didn't want to fall in line, and he wanted to be against the grain. You could, if you wanted to, by modern standpoint, you could write Morgoth as a good guy, as this misunderstood, fallen angel, essentially. He just wanted to create like his master, and he wasn't given that right, and it should be his right, and it isn't. You could write it in that way. But inherently in the book, and this isn't a bad thing at all, it's traditional storytelling, especially when it comes to fantasy, Morgoth and Sauron are just kind of evil. It is very much black and white. Yes, you have some morally grey characters thrown in there as well, with the likes of, Smeagol / Gollum, and you've got Denethor as well, who's a very conflicted character and is a very interesting character. Even more so in the Silmarillion, you have morally grey characters too. But that, because he's going to be Sauron, there's no bones about it. They haven't announced, I don't think they've announced that, but he's Sauron. They're doing a terrible job of disguising that fact that it's clearly Sauron. And the thing is, I'm rooting for him as well. Judging by all the other characters in this show, I'm rooting for Halbrand in this. I want Sauron to just, in the show, I want Sauron to just destroy fucking Middle-earth and just do whatever he wants with it, because I hate Galadriel, I hate all the elves, I hate the dwarf, I hate all of them. Just take them. It's done. But there's terminology they use, and I've written some of the quotes down. It's very triggered terminology, and it really does remind you of Aragorn from the movies. We've got lines such as "unite behind his banner." It's very kingly the way they talk about that. Banner. It makes you think of, Rohan and the one true leader, and leading the free people and everything like that into victory. They mentioned that his people are leaderless. And I think Elrond has a line, something to do with that in The Lord of the Rings. I can't remember which one, where he goes, their numbers are scattered, leaderless. And, he's talking about Aragorn needs to be the one to lead them to victory, for them to rally behind. And then you've got a line that's reforge the alliance, which is a very triggered word, because when you think of reforge, it means, obviously to repair, but when they mention reforge in Lord of the Rings, I immediately think of the shards of Narsil being reforged into Anduil, Aragorn's weapon. And, reforge the alliance, it makes you think of the last alliance of men, and it's very clever word. Well, naturally, no, I take that back. It's not clever wording. It's very telling wording, because they're clearly trying to frame him as this hero character, and then they're just going to bait and switch it that he's the villain all along. Are they going to do something where Sauron's misunderstood this whole time, and we've now got sympathy, if we even have that for Halbrand? Like, if we do by the end of season 1, 2, however many seasons it is before they reveal him as Sauron, if we do at least connect with this character, well, that's just like, you shouldn't connect with Sauron. Sauron is a functional villain. He epitomizes all hopelessness, all futility, darkness, just the void, just evil, just pure evil incarnate. And he serves that in the story. And he's the opponent, he's the antagonist, he's the objective for the good guys to overcome. And that's pretty much it. So I really don't like this modern storytelling they're trying to do, where they're going to try and subvert expectations with this. So let's continue. By the way, I'm talking, but feel free to jump in the chat as well, because I'll bring up your guys' comments, and I really enjoy having a chat. So if I'm way off base, or if you disagree with me, or maybe if you agree with me, please do comment along too, because we're all in this together. Oh, then we get onto this line. So the note that I've got written down, this is the part where Galadriel's talking to Queen Miriel. I keep saying Queen Miriel. She's not a queen. Miriel. And she's telling her that we need to take ships over to Middle-earth to help the men in the Southlands. We need to help them. And they get very irate. And I've written here, Galadriel continues to act like a Class A bitch. There is no compassion. There is no empathy. There is no sympathy. There is no motherly instinct. There is no leadership quality. There is nothing with Galadriel in this show. And I don't even think the actress is really that good. Granted, I haven't seen her in anything else, and it could be mostly down to the direction and the writing. there is just nothing about Galadriel in this. She, as of right now, and they even mention this, I think Halbrand says this, that she's at court. She's basically a queen in her own lands. Galadriel wouldn't be acting like this. Galadriel is one of the oldest beings in Middle-earth at this point. She was born before the sun and the moon were made. She was born and raised in the utmost west. She's one of the oldest people in Middle-earth, yet somehow Celebrimbor looks really old, and he's like old man Celebrimbor, and I don't understand that at all. She should be a queen. She should have been acting as a queen in Middle-earth for absolutely ages at this point. She should have some decorum. She should have some actual political ability, counseling and, being an envoy for her people and everything. She shouldn't be quick to anger like that in these situations. She could easily get herself out of these situations, but she just continues to be a hard-faced bitch the whole time. And the line from the trailer, which was cringeworthy then, and it's even cringeworthy now, so she's like, "There is a tempest in me." And it's just like, oh, fuck off, Galadriel. She's just so unlikable. There isn't a single redeeming trait about Galadriel in this whole show so far. We're 4 episodes in. They've just written her to be this really just thoroughly unlikable, argumentative, stirring the pot bitch. There is no other word that I can use. She's just a fucking bitch the whole time. She's always scowling. She's always angry. Apart from the time she's riding a horse, in which case she smiles, and then you're like, oh, no, go back to scowling. No, please. SeaWorld Man is very fascinated about my chair, apparently. Genuinely wondering, because some chairs don't. Does yours adjust by any chance? It does. I can go up and down on this thing. The back can't recline. I can't recline, but I can go up and down. And more importantly, I can swivel. So it's all good. No arms on this one as well, so it's much better for my shoulders. It's much better for my posture. I like it. There is a tempest in me. God, what a terrible line. What a terrible line. I'm going to get a drink of water, so you guys talk amongst yourselves for a little bit. And then we're going to get on to... we're on to Isildur next, so more fun talking points to come. How are you all doing anyway? How are we all doing tonight? Okay, so then we cut to Isildur, who's, he's out sailing. It's kind of a repeat of the first scene that we got of him, and he's doing his thing on the ship. And then he gets distracted by Numenor and the beautiful sunset or the beautiful sunrise, and he gets distracted. And he lets slip a rope. I think it's a rope. Something goes wrong on the boat. Guys, like, I watched this episode this morning and I'm already forgetting it. Something goes wrong on the boat. I think he accidentally lets slip the rope or something like that. And the guy who's like the captain or the one like helming the ship or the first mate or whoever it is goes to chastise Isildur, who admits to his wrongdoings, and he banishes Isildur's friends from the ship, saying, "You can no longer be sailors. Like, I've had enough of you all. Like, you're all banned." And I was like, well, it was Isildur's fault. The other two, as far as I remember, did nothing wrong. So why not just keep them and just get rid of Isildur? I don't know why he grouped them with his friends. Yeah, weird scene. And I just continue to really dislike how Isildur's portrayed so far in this show. I don't particularly like the actor. I don't think he's doing a good job so far of the character. But then again, it comes down to the writing. I don't want to be too harsh on these actors. It is the writing. The writing is easily... The writing, the disrespect for the law, and just everything in between is easily the biggest downfall of this whole entire show. We then cut back to the orcs in the trench that they're digging, and Arondir, is that the name? The elf dude with the fade. We cut back to the orcs now. How the last episode ended. So recap for everyone if you can't remember. All the orcs were summoning someone called Adar, which is Elvish for father. And when I heard that, I did think to Return of the King, when Arwen leaves the company of elves when they're traveling into the west. She sees that vision of her son. She hightails it back to Rivendell, and you get the whole "from the ashes a fire shall be woken, a light from the shadow shall spring." You get that poem there, and then it cuts back to her, and she goes, "Reforge the sword, Adar. And I heard that word and I was like, why are they say that Adar means leader, and I was like, why would she say that? And then in this episode they say Adar means father. I was like, okay, well that makes sense now when Arwen's, playing to her father. And then the last episode ended where Adar was walking through the orcs, and they were all kind of parting ways, showing that they have respect, or they fear him, or he's quite an intimidating, imposing figure. The episode was trying to make you think it's Sauron, and it clearly isn't, because we already know that Halbrand is Sauron. In fact, I've stopped in my notes calling him Halbrand, and I've just written Sauron. I'm just going with it at this point. And it ended on a really out of focus shot of this person called Adar. We get a bit more of Adar in this one. Now, I think he's played by the guy who played Uncle Benjen in Game of Thrones, because I know that he was cast in it, and when I initially saw his casting, and I'm sure a lot of people had this as well, we all thought that he was going to play Sauron. He clearly isn't. It looks like him. I want to say it's his actor. So he's like just an elf, like a partially corrupted elf that the orcs revere. Almost like they call him father, and he is almost like a religious father in a way. There's this dying orc, and this guy Adar just shows up and kind of does the last rites for him. It's kind of an emotional, like when the orc dies, he stabs the orc to put it out of its misery. As I say, he's done like the kind of last death rites. And he's almost shedding a tear. He's almost crying over this orc, and it's weird because now we've got this kind of pseudo-religious ceremony for the orcs and a sense of, being at peace during death and everything. And it's just really weird. I'm like, why are you trying to make us feel sorry for the orcs? Because, again, like, we shouldn't. Not really. Maybe in the Silmarillion, when orcs first started coming to being and elves were getting captured and tortured and mutilated and fed dark magic, Christ knows what Morgoth was doing. Yeah, we could probably feel sorry for those ones, but when you're generations down the line and we're into the Second Age now, orcs are just orcs. Again, they're just kind of like a faceless evil force. It's very black and white in the Lord of the Rings. Although saying that, there are moments where you've got and they're actually some of my favorite parts in the book, where you've got some of the Uruk-hai or some of the orcs talking amongst each other, and it feels like colleagues at work. It feels, like some working class people, or lower working class people doing a mundane job, just getting through it and cussing out the boss. What will Leberts have to say about this? Shh, keep your voice down. We can't be heard talking about Leberts. All that kind of thing. It's fun. I enjoy that stuff in the book. So I guess, they do have personality in the book, and there definitely is a hierarchy there, and they definitely fear Sauron and don't particularly want to work for him. The animated Return of the King film actually creates a lot of sympathy for the orcs when they've got their song, "Where there's a whip, there's a way." We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says, nay, 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 we're going to march all day, all day, all day. They don't want to do it. The orcs are very much slaves in this Middle Earth. But for the most part, orcs are just fucking evil, and you got to kill them. They're just purely evil creatures, uncompromising creatures, and, you just got to do what you got to do. But now we're creating sympathy with the orcs, and I'm wondering if this is going to be a thing. It's going to be like, oh no, orcs are misunderstood. That they're a race of people too in Middle Earth. Hashtag rights for orcs. And I really hope they don't do that, because, as I say, they're kind of doing that shit with Halbrand, Sauron. And, they're making him some kind of like kingly character, and then they'll do a bait and switch, and they're kind of doing a bait and switch with the orcs. And I don't want them to do that with the forces of evil, because, again, it's traditional storytelling. In traditional fairy tales, it is just uncompromising evil. And to suddenly give, there is a time and a place for, making something more morally grey or reading into a villain or something like that. But sometimes villains have just got to be villains just from the off. Like, you don't need to know their backstory. You don't need to know what made them evil. You don't need to see what they're like actually behind closed doors, and if they really are evil. Like, they just have to serve that narrative function. of being a villain, and especially in fantasy. And it looks like they're breaking away from that. And I don't know. I've just got kind of a hard time with that. Carl says, in your opinion, why have all these studios collectively chosen to create these series and actively going against the fan base? What do they hope to gain by doing this? I think it's just a reflection on modern culture. I think they just think that they're being clever. I genuinely think it comes from a place of hubris. I think it's just directors and filmmakers that get a kick of just ruining what people love. I don't know. That's just how some people get their kicks, I think some people just get their kicks from just tearing down and ruining things that people love. I'm looking at a certain Star Wars director. Maybe it comes from a position of, narcissism and thinking you're above the fan base, thinking you're above the writing that has come before it. And they almost treat it like it's a dissertation, like it's very meta, like you're deconstructing all the components of it rather than actually just making great escapist. I'm talking about The Last Jedi. Of course I am. I'm talking about The Last Jedi. It's very difficult not to, and it's probably easiest, it's like the main ringleader to go to for definite with something like this. It almost feels like you're watching someone just wank off over like a university, dissertation paper, and dismantling everything about Star Wars and everything that makes it Star Wars and trying to subvert that when it shouldn't be. Like, you've got the ingredients, go and write your own story, continue the story, but keep it true to the fan base. Like, you haven't got to completely dismantle it and ruin it from the ground up. And I also think it's just, when one studio does it, and if something makes money, if it gets a certain group of people talking, a very vocal group of people talking, I'm talking about cancel culture here. Other studios will follow suit if it's making bank. But I think actually now, because so many studios are doing it and it's so transparent with what they're doing, I think we've been burnt now. I think a lot of audiences have been burnt by this stuff, and they're seeing the cracks. That it's like the Wizard of Oz now. They're seeing the man behind the curtain, and we are getting a lot of ratios with the Rings of Power. As I said, I think that with a lot of fan base, like when the new Star Wars was coming out, of course we're all hyped for it. I was hyped for it. You were hyped for it. All of us were hyped for it, and then we saw what they fucking did to it. And just kind of what they've done to Star Wars now and what they continue to do with Star Wars. And fingers crossed, I hope that Andor is different. But it probably won't be. We're seeing it with Marvel now. And thankfully, there were diminishing returns with the Eternals and certainly with the new Thor film, to the point where they've got rid of Taika Waititi for the next Thor film. Unfortunately, it looks like... well, I hope they still don't grant him his Star Wars trilogy, because he's meant to be doing a Star Wars. Everyone's getting a Star Wars trilogy, apparently. But now that he's been booted off the next Thor film because of the disappointing reception and returns for, Thor Love and Thunder, which is, I still haven't watched it and I refuse to see it. I've got no interest in watching that film at all. And I've seen all the other Marvel not TV shows. I've seen all the other Marvel films. I've seen them all, apart from that one. And I'll just continue to leave it that way. I think audience are starting to see it a lot more now, especially with all the Disney Plus shows. There is still a massive audience out there that is watching them and still continues to love them, and they'll love it regardless because they love the brand. They don't really maybe review it in the same way. They just accept it. It could be the worst series ever, but if it's got Marvel on it, if it's got Star Wars name on it, they'll just eat that shit up. For whatever reason, whether they're shills or whether they just kind of blindly go with it, or maybe genuinely they really do enjoy it and it's just escapism. They don't want to think about it. They don't have to think about it. They just enjoy switching their brain off and watching some dumb Marvel stuff for a while. And that's there is an audience for that. Absolutely. We're seeing it with the new Disney live action remakes with Pinocchio and especially the Little Mermaid trailer. It seems like people are kind of cluing in now, that they're clued up as to what they're doing and how manipulative it is, and just what they're doing. It's just the cracks are showing now, and it's just laughable that studios and Disney are the biggest ringleader with it. They absolutely are. Amazon are much better. But Carl, you're absolutely right. I know it's been used a lot as an example, but look at Top Gun, and they gave the fans exactly what they wanted and the financial rewards. it can bring. Another example for you, and I just got done watching it at the weekend and did a review on it. Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai and Top Gun Maverick, to me, are the two best examples of nostalgia done right. They are clearly written and clearly made by people that have a love for the original, obviously starring the stars from the original films as well. And it's just written so perfectly where it's not high art, it's, even Top Gun Maverick, you can pretty much break Top Gun Maverick down to, it's basically just A New Hope. It's just the original Star Wars movie. They've got to go, there's a trench run. They've got to make an impossible shot into a small thermal exhaust port. It's a 1 in a million shot. They've got to get out of there. And then they're saved at the last minute by, this is mostly on the honest trailers, but they're saved at the last minute by like a cocky redneck guy who like throws in like, yoo-hoo, and it is the cocky rebel character with a heart of gold. It's exactly like Star Wars. But even A New Hope itself, and I know I'm getting off the Rings of Power now, but I do think it's worth talking about, and it definitely does have a point with the Rings of Power, and just modern culture, really, modern media. When A New Hope came out, from my understanding, if I remember from, reading about it many years ago, around that time, there were a lot of war films, there was a lot of heavy-going films, and yeah, I think it was like Vietnam, wasn't it? I think had just happened, and like everyone was in that headspace. And it was a really trying time, and a lot of the films reflected that at that point. And then when Star Wars came out in 1977, it was just a breath of fresh air. It was just fun, escapist, traditional storytelling. It was storytelling that felt familiar, but yet it was new, and it was pushing the envelope in terms of effects and what can be done, but with a very basic hero story to it. And audiences needed that. It was exactly the right film at that right time. People hadn't seen anything like that before. And yet they kind of had seen something like that before from the various adventure serials that George Lucas had, based Star Wars on originally. And it gave them that sense of fun and that exhilarating feel, and that, going to the movies and being transported to a different place, being swept up in the action and the characters and everything. And that is precisely what Top Gun Maverick did. As I just mentioned, as I just highlighted, it's basically pretty much exactly the same plot as the original Star Wars film, more or less. There's, beat for beat in some bits in the final act. But it just took that character, it advanced it, it developed the character, probably developed the character a lot more than he was in the original film. And there were moments, and if you compare it to Luke Skywalker's character from The Last Jedi, two very similar characters, two characters that are both racked with guilt of a past trauma that happened to them, feel very defeatist and everything like that. But the difference is Maverick was still the fucking man. He was still the best at what he did, and he still goddamn did his job. He was just carrying the weight of this negative thing, but he still pushed on. He still tried, and he didn't give in to it. And when he did, Penny's always there, kind of serving that same character trait as Kerry McGillis's character in the first film, giving him that pep talk and getting him back. She is that supportive structure for him. She's a very well written, she's a good female character in that film. She's a strong female character. She's gorgeous. She gives him that emotional support. She picks him up when he falls down. That's what it's all about. Yeah, the romance angle probably didn't need to be in the film, but it was a nice edge to it. And I thought she was a very well written character, and you could tell that the characters had a history. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but the point is Top Gun Maverick took those characters, advanced it, and there are similar traits there. But comparatively, Luke Skywalker, right, in The Last Jedi, past trauma, depressed, but he wasn't Luke Skywalker. Even Mark Hamill said that. He felt like he was playing Jake Skywalker. This wasn't the character. Whereas with Maverick, although he was a lot more depressed and down on his luck, and he had moments like that in the original film as well. Straight after Goose died, he goes through that massive slump, and then, he's pulled out of it by the end of the film. He's carrying that weight of all that trauma, but he's still the man, and he's still doing what he does, and he's still doing what he does best. And it's a believable continuation to that character. When you've got Luke just gives up, that immediately negates what we know and what we've come to know about Luke Skywalker. And that's why it's not congruent with the character. In my opinion, at least. I know some people like The Last Jedi, and I still don't understand people that do. I'm open to their opinion. They can have their opinion. That's absolutely fine. I just can't physically understand it. And as I said, Cobra Kai, just those characters, the writing is so good. The dialogue's very, machismo. It's very hammy. but you can tell that it's, you know, it's coming from the right place. They have a love for those original films, and they've written it perfectly. They've continued those characters in surprising and in some ways subversive ways that we never expected, but it stays true to the core of what came before, which takes me on to the Rings of Power again, not staying true to the core of Tolkien and to what came before. It's, you know, it's trying to be subversive. It's trying to put its, as Peter Jackson said when he made the Lord of the Rings films, you can find an interview of this. They didn't want to put their own message, their own political agenda, their own ideas, their own politics into it, or their modern sensibilities of thinking. They just wanted to adapt Tolkien that was on the text. They just wanted to take those books and adapt it for a visual medium. That's all you've got to fucking do. But, you know, the hubris and the writing team as well, and the Tolkien aficionado they had, who's, we need to go with a much more liberal approach than Tolkien did. We need to write, I think, what was the quote? We need to write the novel that Tolkien never did. And it's just, fuck you. Fuck right off if you think you're even comparable to 0.1% of Tolkien's talent. You know, oh, we can do it better. We can write Tolkien better than Tolkien did. Tolkien needs to be modernized. No, it doesn't. It's traditional storytelling. It is written to be a legend. It is written to be a mythology to England. And it's traditional storytelling. It was written for that time. And it was like, you know, in olden times, in ancient times. It's not going to reflect today. And that's not the point of it. That's not why we watch The Lord of the Rings. That's not why we read The Lord of the Rings. We don't want it to reflect today. It's escapism to take us to a secondary world that predates our own, that is mythological in setting and is very archaic in its storytelling and its way of life and its culture. And that's absolutely fine. And the one thing that I equate it to as well, you know, you've got that film coming out, what is it? The Woman King, I think, coming out, you know, the African tribal film. And I was watching that, and you know, I don't know if the film's any good. I watched the trailer for it. You know, it looks fine, but you can tell that the film is just literally made to pass a message again, like most films now. But culturally, it looks bang on. You know, it's, you know, African culture. You know, it's, you know, they've got the music in there. You know, the cast that they've chosen for it and everything. It all looks congruent with what they're going for. Now, if I were to say, oh, well, I don't think this is, you know, I'm an Asian gentleman and I don't feel represented by this film, the Woman King or whatever it's called. You should add some Asian people into your African tribe, you know, or hey, this is, you know, there's no white people in this cast, and you know, we're not really being representative of everyone, and we want to include everyone. We want to be as liberal as possible and bring as many people into it. We need some more Caucasian actors in this film too. You know, we need some Chinese, we need some Indian people, we need Koreans, you know, we need some Kiwis, we need some, you know, Maoris in there, we need this and that. You'd be watching it and thinking, well, this doesn't make sense because this is, you know, like I don't know what year it's meant to be set in, but it's a period piece, you know, African tribe. You'd be like, well, that doesn't fit. That's not right. That doesn't fit the culture of this world, of this story that's being told. But how come we can do that with stuff like The Lord of the Rings, you know, which itself is written to be an English mythology and steeps in European mythology? How can we do that with so many other things that come out and other period pieces where we can, you know, whether we gender flip characters or whether we, you know, add, you know, groups of people in there that weren't meant to belong there at that point in history. You watch it and your brain just goes, well, that doesn't match history. That doesn't feel right, you know? But it's just funny how it can be, it's totally fine to have it one way, but all the other way, oh, no, we can't do that. So, yeah, it's just modern culture, is it? It's just modern media at the moment. It's so hypocritical with everything. It's just, you know, if you want it to be equal, if you want it to be liberal all across the board, then make it all across the board. But you can't pick and choose because it just completely defeats the point of it. Anyway, let's continue. What's the name of the mother character in this? Is it oh god, what's the name? The one who cut the head off the orc in like episode 1 or 2. Help me out here. Not Morwen. It's not Morwen. It's she's the mother of Theo. I can't remember her name. The show hasn't done a good enough job to remind me of her name. I can't remember her name. She's led the people to this tower to get away from the village where they'll all be safe. She hasn't been voted a leader, by the way. She just said, like, hey, I've got an idea. We should go to this tower. And she's basically now proclaimed herself the leader because, of course, we need more female empowerment in this show. She's now the leader. And people have mentioned before that, you know, she's very made up. She looks absolutely gorgeous. She looks absolutely stunning, on point, clean, well-dressed and everything like that. But everyone else in the village is just all covered in dirt and mud and messed up and look really gross. But not her. You know, she's absolutely immaculate. She looks $1 million. And yeah, she's proclaimed herself the leader. And this guy quite rightly says, who gave you the right to decide? I think she talks about, we're going to go back to the village and we're going to go get some supplies from there. And he says, like, oh no, we shouldn't do that. I think he says that. And then he says, like, well, who gave you the right to decide? Like, you're just one of us. Like, you're not a leader. We didn't vote you in. Like, who gave you the right to decide? And she bites back with such venom. She says, everyone who decided to come to this tower, Waldreg, including you. Like, no, you just posed an idea, or why don't we all go to this place? And then as a community, you all went to that place. It doesn't make you a leader. And, you know, oh, what is it that Tywin Lannister said in Game of Thrones to Joffrey? He who calls himself king is not king. It's exactly like this. You know, she's proclaimed it like, I'm the leader. I'm in charge. I say what goes because people followed me. I made the idea and people followed me. It's not how leadership works. That's certainly not how democracy works. It's like Palpatine. I love democracy. Yeah, that just really rubbed me up the wrong way as well. And that's how they're writing all of their female characters in this. Just really obnoxious, power-hungry motherfuckers. It's just, yeah. Anyway, Theo decides to sneak into the village because, you know, they're all starving. They don't have many provisions. And Theo decides to sneak into the village with his friend. And by sneak into the village, like, they don't know if it's populated by orcs. They assume it is, but they don't know. And they make their approach into the village by just walking straight down the main path into the village. They're not coming at it from, like, any undergrowth. They're not, like, army crawling on the ground. They're not, like, scoping it out. They just think, oh, it's daytime. Like, we'll be fine because orcs don't like the daytime. They're like vampires. Which they're not very consistent with in this series, I will say. They kind of do like this whole vampiric thing with them at the end where our characters make it to safety and then the sun. It's granted, cinematography-wise, it's a beautiful shot where the sun crests the horizon and, you know, just illuminates everything and the orcs can't give chase because they can't come out into sunlight. But I thought the whole essence of them having these like bone helmets and stuff that are almost like caps, that are almost like hats to shield them from the sun. They've got capes that they can kind of drape over them. I thought the whole point that all the orcs were wearing those wasn't just a fashion statement. I thought that was so that they could walk in sunlight. They've got protection. You know, if you're walking in the desert, what do you need? You need some like coat to throw over you to like shield you from the sun, to, you know, keep out of the heat. To keep out of the direct sunlight. And I thought that was precisely why all the orcs are dressed exactly the same in this one. But apparently they still can't come out in sunlight. So I don't know. That's fair. You know, that's a fair point there. So Sam Oak says, I mean, the Woman King is based off real life. Tolkien is fantasy. Very weird tangent. No, I think it's worth saying because it's, you know, although it's fantasy, Tolkien did write it as a history, as a mythology, but steeped it predominantly in European culture. I'm talking about the culture that it's meant to be set, the time period that it's meant to be set. I've mentioned many times that that Middle-earth is a multicultural world. It is, absolutely. You know, you've got the Easterlings, you've got the Southrons, you've got the deserts of Rhûn, you've got the Southlands and everything like that. You've got the Corsairs, you've got the Druidain. All of these cultures that could be explored in the show, that would make more congruent sense with the world that was created by Tolkien, and they've just chose not to do that, which now complicates the geography of the world and sort of like, you know, just the ethnicity of the world, at least to me. You know, if you disagree, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, as I say, I haven't seen the trailer for it. I went to see Pulp Fiction the other night at the cinema, and usually they pick trailers that fit the film, but I mean, I don't know why we got the trailer for that one. It was really weird, but yeah, no, the trailer looked really, really cool. I've forgotten the name of the actress who's playing the lead in that, but you know, you can clearly tell that she's, you know, beefed up for it, and yeah, it looks really intimidating. So yeah, if it's decent, I'll have to check when it's coming out. I'm not sure if it's out at the cinema right now or if it's coming out soon, but yeah, it didn't look like a bad film. I like my period pieces. I like my historical pieces, and it's a story that I don't really know much about as well. So yeah, I'm down for watching it. See, that's fucked up. Yeah, I don't agree with that shit, because that shit is fucking horrible. You know, racist just giving it 1 star. I mean, are we tarring them all with the same? Like, do we know specifically they're a racist by giving it a 1 star? Have they left like really racist reviews on it? I bring that up because I've been the victim of cancel culture before that, and racism is real and racism is fucking horrible. But genuinely, if someone really didn't like the film and gave it 1 star, I don't think that necessarily makes them a racist if they just purely didn't like the film. If they didn't enjoy the film, they're perfectly within their right to give it a 1 star. If, for example, they left a review and said, I'm giving this film 1 star because racism, yeah, that's fucking abhorrent and that's absolute bullshit. But if they've, you know, said that I didn't think the acting was that great, you know, there wasn't really much sense of a story, didn't feel like a very focused film, the cinematography wasn't, if it's all like legitimate reasons why they didn't like the film, then they're perfectly within their right to give it a 1 star. But yeah, if they have like absolute hate speech and vile racist comments in there, then yeah, that's absolute bullshit. Sam Oak says the film hadn't come out. There were over 1,001 ratings. Okay, yeah, that's bullshit. Yeah, that's fucking bullshit. Like, at least if someone's watched the film and didn't like it and then leaves a review 1 star, that's totally fine. But yeah, if the film's not even out, you know, I mean, I always say not to judge a film until it comes out, but I think that, you know, with trailers, you can judge. That's precisely why trailers are there. It's to get you enticed into it. But even then, there's been some films with really terrible trailers, but then you watch the film and you go, holy shit, this is actually really fucking good. There's a lot of films with fantastic trailers, and then you watch the film and then you go, oh, this film's a piece of shit. So yeah, no, I've been down for watching it. I actually thought the trailer looked really decent. It looked light on story from the trailer, but yeah, I'll check it out. As I say, I like my historical, my period pieces. I really enjoy that. I don't know. So Rings of Power, no. I mean, I was down for it when I heard that Amazon were producing a Lord of the Rings show. I was out of my mind. I was like, this is perfect. This is the perfect medium for it. You know, we've got loads of episodes, everything we can flesh out. They said it was going to be in the Second Age, and I was thinking, oh my god, the first image came out and it was the 2 trees, and I thought, oh my god, they're actually adapting Silmarillion stuff as well. I was losing my mind. And then the first trailer came out, and then the cast pictures came out, and then the super fan featurette came out, and then the hateful articles came out and just tearing down Tolkien fans. That's where I drew the fucking line, and I was like, okay, there was part of me that thought maybe it could still be good, but the more stuff that came out, the more trailers, the more clips, the more shots, the more featurettes that came out, that's where I knew that this was kind of doomed from the off. And as I say, when I went into episode 1, because I knew that it was going to be nothing related to Tolkien, it's not based off his works, it's based off in name alone, it's doing its own thing. I wanted to come into this show divorcing myself from Tolkien, thinking, right, okay, it's not going to be anything like the books or anything like that, but I still want to review it on its merits as just kind of like a generic fantasy show. And even in that respect, I think it fails. I think it's terribly written. I think it's poorly acted. I don't think the costume design's great at all. consider it's the most expensive show ever. Yeah, you get some really nice visuals. You know, some of the CGI landscapes are great, but a lot of the times when the actors are on set, it looks really fake and really CGI. And then when it just cuts to it, it just feels very small scale. And I'll get onto that later on in the episode when I talk about it. There's moments in this episode where you could have had some real drama and some real action and, you know, really see the money on screen, and you'll just get like an awkward edit, and you'll just skip past like a whole massive scene that could have been, you know, like genuinely like character driven and compelling. So I mean, it had ratings of 1 before the show aired. I mean, again, like I think the argument is once you've got like trailers out for it and loads of stuff and the superfans video and, you know, the ratios, like if you're a Tolkien fan, you know that, well, this isn't Tolkien. And this is the conflicting thing right now, because with this episode today, there are moments, and, you know, I'll throw in a positive here while I'm at it. I think it comes in later in the episode, though. We have the character of Elrond, and he's talking about his father, and he's talking about the exploits of Eärendil, the Mariner, and how he feels like he can't compare to the exploits of his father, who is literally sailing in a flying ship in the sky called Vingalot, carrying he's basically the North Star. He's constantly in the sky. He's like this astronomical being now, which is always really weird. I think it's cool, but it's out there, and that's great because it's, you know, it's lore, it's stuff for Tolkien fans. It's he's laying it all out, all the shit from the Silmarillion and everything. You know, Eärendil the Mariner, the story of him. And it was great. It was genuinely great to hear Elrond talk about his father. But I'm like, who is this show made for? Because there's moments like that where you get some actual lore from the books that's accurate and that's good. But then so much of it that just disregards it and completely fucks it all up. It's like, who is this made for? Because you haven't won over the hearts of any Tolkien fans because you've just played fast and loose with so much of it. You've outright talked against Tolkien fans online in articles, calling all Tolkien fans that don't like the show ists and phobes and everything in between. So you've already alienated your core fan base because everything's wrong, but then you'll throw some genuine good lore moments in the episode like that. It's like, who are you trying to win over here? It's very weird. When you were talking about well, I think it's different, isn't it? Because I think like Woman King's a film, but with Lord of the Rings, you've got this whole wealth of history of like novels and everything, of stories that people have held dear. And we've also had like Lord of the Rings depicted in a visual medium. People know what they come to expect with the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and everything. I was under the opinion, you know what, I will give the first 2 episodes a go. I didn't think it was going to be good just because of how all the featurettes had completely dismissed Tolkien and how it just completely just wiped its ass with the lore, basically. But there was always that part of me that was like, you know what, I'll watch episodes 1 and 2 and I'll see, and I'll judge it on its own merits. But there's so many people that are like, oh, you know, even now it's like, oh, give it a chance. You're so hateful. Just give it a chance. It's like, we're literally halfway through the first season right now, and it's still terrible. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. But I think the marketing was all the way off with the Rings of Power and just completely alienated the fan base from the beginning, like the core Tolkien fans. Yeah, and even not just core Tolkien fans, but people that just enjoyed the movies. It's like, who is this show made for? No, you're not arguing at all, Sam. You're not arguing at all. And, you know, as I say, I'm always open to different opinions on this thing. I don't want everyone to agree with me because it'd just be really fucking boring. Yeah, it's an interesting debate. I'm not going to say it isn't. I think it's just me as a Tolkien fan. I guess I always knew that this was kind of doomed from the beginning, and I kind of accepted that in my mind, but I was still kind of open to it where, well, even though it's not following Tolkien and it's basically 100% fan fiction, at least it still might be entertaining, and I can just watch it as a fantasy show, and it could be like a well-made, well-acted, well-written fantasy show that's meant to be based in Middle-earth, but just completely does away with the books and does its own thing. And I guess I would have I still wouldn't have liked that, because I think if you've got the keys to the kingdom and you've got the rights to what you've got, and you've spent all this money and it's the most expensive show ever made, why not stay true to the law? Why all of a sudden is Tolkien a problem now? Because it was never a problem when Peter Jackson made his trilogy, beloved by millions, wins all the Oscars, incredible stuff. The Hobbit, there were a lot of problems with the Hobbit films in terms of disregarding the law and just, CGI and everything. All the problems are out there on the internet for that kind of stuff. But the way that the world was depicted was absolutely fine. And, people weren't really complaining about that stuff. It was more like the jokey Radagast the Brown stuff. It was the crowbarred in love triangle with Toriel, and, just how bloated the films were. That's where, and the CGI, which is where most of the criticism comes with the Hobbit films. But now, all of a sudden, when we're depicting Tolkien, it's a problem. We've got to tick boxes. We've got to fill a quota. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. And it's... people never complained about that shit. But the argument, and I've mentioned this before, the argument that really just grinds my gears is where, oh, I don't feel represented by this thing, therefore I can't enjoy this thing. Unless I see a character on screen who is exactly the same gender as me, who is the same ethnicity as me, who has the same sexual preference as me, I can't like this product. I can't like this film, this TV show, this character, whatnot, unless I see someone who is an exact mirror image of me on screen. And that, to me, is just the most narrow-minded outlook on escapism, on fiction, on anything. When I watch Terminator 2 and I see the character of Sarah Connor, does that mean that does that mean that I hate the character, or I can't connect with the character because, oh, I'm not a woman and I'm not a mother, and therefore I don't like the character of Sarah Connor? Does that mean that I can't take anything away from her character, just her strength, her dedication, her love for her children, how fucking badass she is, and how cool she is on screen? No, I still love that character, of course, but it's just a very, very small-minded aspect now where people demand to be 100% carbon copied, represented in something, until they can like that thing. And that's just fucking bullshit as far as I'm concerned. Because you may as well just throw out every single film, every single thing. You watch a cartoon, oh, well, I'm not a hand-drawn animated character, so I can't enjoy this. I can't enjoy Beauty and the Beast. I can't enjoy any Disney film, any DreamWorks film. It's the characters, it's the storytelling that should be above all. And the thing is as well, like, Tolkien tackled themes of racism, of misogyny. It wasn't really misogyny, it was just tradition. Men just did battle. That wasn't just misogyny, that was just how society was. But he challenged that with the character of Eowyn in Return of the King. It's a fucking great moment. And not just the character of Eowyn. Galadriel's an infinitely powerful character. She's one of the most powerful beings in Middle-earth. You've got Melian in the Silmarillion. You've got Luthien, who literally lulls the most evil being in all of Arda, Melkor, into a sleep, and is infinitely powerful. Tackles themes of racism, perfectly symbolized in Return of the King, Gimli and Legolas. How these two races that just hate each other can come together and find common ground. Even like the elven human relationship that you get with Aragorn and Arwen, bringing those two races together and uniting them again. It's all there. It's all there. And people just choose not to see that. One of my favorite scenes in the book and the film, I think it's in the extended edition of Two Towers. It's in Ithilien, where Frodo and Sam see the Mumakil, see the Oliphants walking, and they've got all the Haradrim around them. And Faramir's rangers, they ambush them, and they're picking them off because it's these whole swathes, all these swaths of armies just coming into, and they're trying to cut down the numbers. And he pot shots this one guy from the top of the Mumakil, crashes to the ground. And he has this beautiful speech where, and you can clearly tell from Tolkien being in the trenches in the Battle of the Somme in World War I and everything that he must have witnessed. he turns this guy over who's from a completely other world away, different ethnicity, different race, different background, different homeland, everything. And he says, was his cause to come to war any different than ours? Is he really any different to us? You wonder what his name is, where he came from, and if he was really evil at heart. And he poses that question. He really humanizes just that one troop. And it just brings everything all together. So for people saying that Tolkien is a racist and isn't progressive, and his texts are no longer relevant in 2022, and they're old and archaic, you're completely missing the point of escapism and fantasy and traditional storytelling and all of those themes and everything there. If you want to read into that stuff, it is in the text. And isn't The Lord of the Rings the second best-selling book next to the Bible? I think it is. People are continuing to read it. And if anything good comes out of the Rings of Power, it's the fact that hopefully it turns people on to Tolkien's works and the books, or even the films, if people haven't seen the films before and they go back to those. So, yeah. Anyway, sorry. It's an interesting debate, though, Sam. No, I completely agree with you. It's a very interesting debate, and it's a debate I'm willing to have. Sam says Peter Jackson's films had a lot of problems before. I remember homophobic abuse at Ian McKellen being cast. See, I was very young in the lead up to the first Lord of the Rings film. I was 8 years. Oh God, I feel so old. Christ, I'm so old. I was 8 years old when the Fellowship of the Ring came out, and I mean the internet. Was it probably around? I guess maybe, I don't know. Was the internet around when in? I guess it was, wasn't it, in 2000? So I didn't know anything about all that stuff, and that's actually the first I've heard about it now, actually. And I guess you're always going to get people like that, and as I say, like, I don't condone people like that. People that are outright homophobic and racist are fucking horrible, and that's not on, because obviously Ian McKellen, wonderful human being, fantastic actor. You couldn't wish for a better actor to play Gandalf. Even now, after, the Hobbit films, Lord of the Rings, I can't imagine anyone else playing that character. Although I guess in the Rings of Power, we've got Meteor Man, who is clearly going to be Gandalf, I think. So I guess we do have another actor playing Gandalf at the moment. But yeah, like, I don't condone that shit at all. Like, that's fucking horrible. And Sam says, like, you read the blogs from the time. So yeah, you're always going to have people like that, though. You're always going to have just total dickheads like that. But unfortunately, people from that just tar everyone with the same brush then. Anyone that does have... Say if people didn't want Ian McKellen, not for those reasons, but just thought, they should have cast this actor. Like, I'm not really into Ian McKellen's work or anything like that. They will then be called racist. And it's like, well, no, they have an opinion. They're entitled to their opinion. But it just takes, a few bad cooks to spoil the broth, or whichever terminology, whatever you want to say. Yeah, and it's probably the same with Rings of Power, but now everyone who hates this show, and there's a lot of people that dislike this show, like every trailer, every featurette has been completely ratioed because people aren't liking this shit and calling it out for what it is. But now everyone who hates this show is a phobe. And that shit doesn't fly with me, because that shit was used against me. And that's not right. As I said, like, homophobia and racism does exist in this world, and it's fucking horrible, and it's fucking evil. But just someone saying, like, oh, I don't agree with how they've adapted Tolkien's works here. This isn't how he wrote it, and this isn't how it should be depicted. That's absolutely fine. That's an opinion, and that person is entitled to have their opinion. But just going, I disagree with your opinion. I don't like your hot take on this, therefore you're a racist and you're this and you're that and you should be crucified on a fucking cross of fire. That shit isn't cool, because then that's mob mentality. Then it's our way or the highway. It's just, you can have no discourse then, you can have no argument, you can have no debate about things. And I like debating things. It's all good. We've got Tar Elenion Maronway says, I was involved in the forums and news groups then. I don't recall any specific abuse of McKellen. The only thing I recall is a report about him getting an email. We had back and forth. It's true, Tar. People keep saying that, but no receipts are produced, and I was there. Tar's like, I was there 3,000 years ago. It does feel like fucking hell. It does feel like 3,000 years ago. No, I take that back. Actually, it feels like it was yesterday. I still distinctly remember going to see Fellowship of the Ring at the cinema. Taking this exact, well, it's not this exact book, but it was this copy of the book. This is my copy of the Lord of the Rings. This is the one that we had in the library at school, and taking this out because I was a narcissistic little shit back then. And I thought, oh yes, I'm going to read this. How many pages? 1,100 and something page book. And I tell you what, I made a bloody good go of it. At the age of 8, I got to the Great River. I made it past Lothlorien, but back then I didn't know. I was comparing the film. I absolutely adored the film. And then I was reading this and thinking like, oh, this is really slow and the film's a lot more punchy and it's a lot more dramatic. And who's this Tom Bombadil motherfucker? And I really struggled through the Tom Bombadil stuff when I first read it. And not even the first time I tried to read it, but the second, third, and fourth time I tried to read the book. I had a lot of false starts, believe it or not. The Lord of the Rings are my favorite films of all time, but I really struggled with the book. And then when I actually did get around to reading it, and then I think listening to the audiobooks definitely helped as well. There's a great audiobook that I'd really recommend people listen to if you haven't done so already. It's a theatrical audiobook by a guy called Phil Dragash. One guy reads the whole book, matches his voices of the characters to the film counterparts. He has the film music on there. He has sound effects on there as well. It's so immersive. It's absolutely wonderful. So if you're looking to go back to the Lord of the Rings again, or you want an audiobook experience, definitely check out Phil Dragash. It's incredible. And while you're at it, check out Blue Fax's Hobbit theatrical audiobook as well. That was brilliant too. Lord Oakenshield says, if you need to be represented to feel empathy for a character, then I suppose a white person cannot love 12 Years a Slave. This is so dumb. Exactly. If you break it down like that, everything is just completely unraveled and dismantled in terms of, empathy and escapism or whatever it happens to be. It's such a narrow-minded look on things. It's really backwards thinking. Sam says, I don't see Tolkien as a racist. It seems more that a lot of people that gatekeep his work do so with political prejudice and have made it so. Again, I can't speak for people that have been outright racist, but I don't think that saying that this is how the cultures are depicted in the book and this is how they should have depicted it in the film, which, well, they have depicted it in the films and they have depicted it in The Hobbit, but now all of a sudden it's a problem and we've got to completely change things for the sake of changing things. I think that people do have a right to say this doesn't match the cultures of the book and this doesn't match. Because the thing is, and this is what I was saying, right? And I've said this numerous times. I think I've said this on every single trailer reaction I've done of the Rings of Power because I have to keep justifying myself here. And I shouldn't have to justify myself, but I'm going to anyway. So that nothing I say is taken out of context because people like to do that. But Middle Earth, as I've said, Middle Earth is a multicultural world. There are so many different races and ethnicities in Middle Earth. And if they wanted to go with a more progressive approach, going, oh, well, the Lord of the Rings films didn't have, didn't have enough black actors, it didn't have enough Asian actors, whichever corner of the earth people are from, it didn't have all of these demographics. And we want to depict these races more in the Rings of Power. That's going to be one of our focal points. Fine, that's great. You can absolutely do that. But just make it congruent with the lore, because Tolkien was very meticulous with his world building and everything made sense. Everything made sense, from the genealogy to ethnicities to geography and to everything. Like, it was really meticulous how it was created. And the thing is, if you want to go with a more diverse cast, you can absolutely do that. I've said time and time again, I really wish the show would have explored the Easterlings, would have explored the Haradrim, because Tolkien writes about them, but he never went into as much depth because, like, the dude fucking died. Like, the guy was writing Middle-earth stuff and adding to the Silmarillion and stuff like that. He was just working on this work that was never going to be finished because it was too vast. It was a whole other world. You can never make it complete. So there aren't really that many writings out there with the Easterlings. And then, of course, you've got the Blue Wizards who traveled into the East as well. I would love to have seen them depicted in the show. You could have showed entire cultures of the Haradrim and the different camps and the different provinces. You could have shown the deserts of Rune depicted on screen for the first time. I would have loved that shit. I'd have loved that. And you could have been as diverse as you wanted to with that. And guess what? You'd be doing that. You'd potentially bringing in a new audience. And more importantly, you're staying true. You're staying faithful to the source material, and it makes sense within the world of Middle-earth. And as I said, if you don't agree with that, if you think it should be modernized, then guess what? Just don't fucking watch it. Don't depict it. Don't adapt it. If Amazon doesn't agree with the world that it's depicting and doesn't like Tolkien and thinks he's a fucking racist and isn't progressive enough and all of these things, and we need to modernize Tolkien, then guess what? Don't fucking modernize Tolkien. Create your own fantasy world, and I dare it to be anywhere as close to Tolkien's world. Just create your own fantasy show. There is all of these things. The thing is with Game of Thrones is a multicultural world because it's a much more modern fantasy setting, and it's got more subversive, it's written to be that way. It's designed to be that way. And that makes sense. And you can do that with Game of Thrones. It's not a problem. Not a problem at all. That's not how Tolkien wrote his mythology. And that doesn't make Tolkien a racist. It's just a different fantasy world. It's just a different legendary world that was created. So as long as it stays true to the world building of each of its respective things, then I don't have a problem. When something challenges that and when something goes against that, that's where I have a problem. And that's where my problem just comes with this. That's all. So, and it's fine to have different opinions. JX Edit says, off the top of your head, do you remember the year that Tolkien died? I do, 1973. It's very interesting. I've always said this. The Hobbit book was published in 1937. So we've got 1937. And he died in 1973. 1973. And what's really scary about that, I think I've mentioned this before. Tara Lenian got it as well, 1973. Yep, Sam as well, 73. What's amazing about that is if we bring up those numbers, if you know your Lord of the Rings, 1 ring to rule them all, 9 rings for mortal men doomed to die, 7 for the dwarf lords in the halls of stone, and 3 for the elven kings under the sky. It's all the rings of power are accounted for. It's very, very coincidental. It's almost terrifying, actually. But I love that little bit of trivia. And that's how I remember the dates. Tar Elenian Maranwe says the problem is not so much the depiction not matching the books; it is the dishonesty and gaslighting that comes with it. Yeah, just come out and admit that it is not how Tolkien did it. Yeah, and the thing is as well, like this isn't our first rodeo. It's happened with loads of different things. Picard, for example, Kenobi, people that have legitimate criticisms against the character, how the character was written, or they think that the character was very one note, or the acting wasn't great, they take that and go, you're a racist, you don't like the show, you're a racist against this person. Now, were there probably some racist remarks thrown at various actors? Yeah, there probably were. And as I've said, I don't agree with that shit. But people that actually go, I don't think this character is written well, I think the actress is quite obnoxious, how she plays the part. Those are all very valid criticisms, and people are entitled to have that opinion, and people can voice that opinion. Doesn't make them a racist. People always go for the race card every single time, and it's just kind of getting really, really old to me now at this point. I think it just goes to show just how prolific the Lord of the Rings is in terms of the fantasy genre. Like it really has just changed everything. And now every single fantasy world or every new fantasy book that comes out is always held against the Lord of the Rings. It's just the way that it's always going to be. And I do think that Game of Thrones sometimes gets a little bit obnoxious with its subversion. It just feels like it's doing it for the sake of doing it, rather than doing it for like an actual good narrative standpoint. There are some what's the word I'm looking for? There's some exceptions to this, like Ned Stark, for example. I love that. I love what his death symbolizes with it. But there are some points as the books go on, and certainly as the shows go on, where it feels like they're just throwing up in all those subversions just to be subversive for the sake of it, rather than actually doing it from a natural standpoint. I also don't agree with some of the things that George R. Martin has said about Tolkien. And this isn't me gatekeeping. It just feels very... what's the word? Oh God, I'm forgetting my words now. It's getting late, guys. Contradictory. It just seems very, very contradictory. For example, like he talks about when he first read The Lord of the Rings, and then when Gandalf the Grey died, he really loved that part. Not because he wanted Gandalf to die, but just how ballsy the story was at that point, how ballsy it was to kill off Gandalf, who was their support structure and always got them out of, every single situation. And then he really hated when they brought him back later on in the books as Gandalf the White, and he basically leveled up. And he hated that, bringing back dead characters. And I'm like, okay, that's fair enough. You're entitled to have that opinion. Then why do we have Jon Snow resurrected, Beric Dondarrion resurrected a whole bunch of times, Lady Stoneheart, Catelyn Stark resurrected, Gregor Clegane resurrected as Sir Strong, which is a really shit name. Loads and countless of other characters that have been resurrected. So it's like, if you don't like that story trope, George, then don't write it in your own books and then cuss out Tolkien for doing exactly the same thing. So I don't like some stuff like that. And at least Tolkien finished his novels, which is, I don't think the same can be said for George R.R. Martin. I think he's just sitting on his cash cow like Scrooge McDuck at this point. I don't think he needs to write another Game of Thrones book. The shows and the spin-offs and all the other spin-offs that are planned are just going to make bank for him. And I think he's just lost the passion for it. I think maybe we'll see book 6. I don't know when. I think I'm going to be an old man, but I certainly don't think we're going to get book 7. Lord Oakenshield says, having a diverse cast with a great occasion to show the Haradrim. I've read somewhere that Tolkien said the Haradrim were inspired by ancient Ethiopia. Yeah, exactly. There's so much. And then, if you want to go nuts with it, if you want to go nuts with the whole like nostalgia baiting and stuff, because, we've got to have a Balrog in the show. We've got to have, I'll get onto Mithril in a minute. We'll get back to the episode in question. You could have thrown the Oliphants in there. Why not? Just go, hey, you guys remember the Oliphants? Here you go. Here's your Oliphants. We couldn't have elephants in Game of Thrones Season 7 and Season 8 with the Golden Company. So here you go. We've got the most expensive show now, Game of Thrones, so we've got Oliphants. Yeah, I would have loved to have seen that shit. Genuinely. Would love to have seen that and explored more of that culture. And even now when I read the books, my imagination just goes nuts with it. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate that Tolkien intentionally left some things... he created legends within his own legendarium, things that don't make a lot of sense maybe, or that you want to know the answers to. Tom Bombadil, as I've mentioned, is like the biggest example of that. And there's loads of these little Easter eggs and stuff thrown in that you just like, I want to know all these like characters and like nuggets of information. It's like, I want to know more about that. The Blue Wizards, it's like, oh, Tolkien, why do you have to be so vague? I really want to know about these characters. The Haradrim, the Easterlings, and everything like that. I'm fascinated by that stuff, and it does really set your imagination on fire. But this was their chance to do it. And the thing is, I owned up to the fact, because it is covering such a huge expanse of time with the Second Age, there's not a massive amount of like dialogue in the Silmarillion, especially not in the appendices, which is the only thing, as far as I know, that Amazon have the rights to, at the scant few pages of the Second Age in the appendices. That, yeah, you will have to create characters and you will have to create original dialogue and all the things that come with an adaptation, and that's absolutely fine. So if you were going into it where we've got a fan fiction, a lot of this stuff to fill the gaps between the major core events of the books and the appendices, we've got to fill those gaps, and plus we've got 5 seasons to do it. There's your chance. I'd have been fine fan fiction and a whole thing with the Easterlings, fan fiction and a whole thing with the Haradrim or the Corsairs or wherever you want to go. I'd be absolutely cool with that. And I would understand the need for that, to do that. If you had a whole original tribe of unnamed, of characters that Tolkien had never created with the Easterlings, just to show them on screen. Yeah, I understand the need to do that. But it's just that question of staying true to the law. And again, as has been mentioned, just the gaslighting and how dishonest and disrespectful Amazon are. And also lying about, viewing figures and deleting reviews off things and blocking people from reviewing the episode because they know that what they've produced is shit. And as I said, like, I've watched a bunch of channels that know people on the inside, and apparently Amazon, it's like heads are rolling at the moment because of what's happened with the show. So maybe we'll see a change in writing team. And actually, I think that would do the show a lot of favors, in all honesty. Like, I might not like it as a Tolkien fan just because it's not even attempting to depict Tolkien. And in the moments that it does, as I mentioned, like with the Eärendil stuff, it just feels really disingenuous because then it's surrounded by a whole lot of stuff that just contradicts the lore. But with a different writing team, maybe we will get some quality writing. If you compare it to Game of Thrones season 1, it's exactly what I think Game of Thrones has 2 more episodes, doesn't it? It has 10 episodes, whereas this only has 8. But even still, you think of how much ground was covered in just 1 episode of season 1 of Game of Thrones, and everything that happened and all the events that were set up and the narrative and where we were going and what was going to happen. You imagine what was accomplished in 4 episodes of Game of Thrones season 1. Loads of stuff. How much have we really furthered the story in the Rings of Power so far? We're 4 episodes in. And tonight's episode feels like this is the first episode where it's like, right, okay, we're actually moving in a forward direction. Maybe that's just what you get when you have limited Galadriel screen time and no Harfoots. I tell you what, I didn't like this episode, but I will concede, I think so far this is probably the strongest episode. I use the word strongest, but it's the one I've hated the least. And I think it's just because, number one, Galadriel had limited screen time. Every time it did cut back to her, I just went like, oh, it's like, here we go. And no hobbits, no Harfoots are in this episode, which was an absolute godsend. So, yeah. I don't know. I think maybe a different writing team that actually just can write well and gives these people a sense of character and, can edge it maybe more towards the lore. I think that would do absolute wonders for this show. But the question is it a little too late? Has it already alienated the fan base it was going for? Come season 2, will there be any hype? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how it goes, but I don't imagine it will. But it's going to have to, because Amazon have signed themselves up for 5 seasons, so it's here to stay. Sam says, at least we all know how House of the Dragon is ending, unlike Game of Thrones. Yeah, I do watch Nerdrotic's channel, and I don't agree with everything he says, and he's very political for me. I don't get political or anything like that, but I mean, dude has I'm all for people being a patriot, but dude's got like a billowing like stars and stripes flag behind him, and sometimes he gets a little bit near the mark, even for me, and gets very, very political. I love his stuff, and I think his critique on stuff is absolutely on point, don't get me wrong, but I do think sometimes, just sometimes he gets a little bit overboard, I think, but not all the time. For the most part, I completely agree with the stuff he's saying, but sometimes I'm just like, oh, okay, well, you don't need to go on this political agenda right now. Or not, that's not even the right word to say it, political agenda, but just he gets very soapbox at some point in terms of modern day politics. And I'm like, let's just keep it on the thing that we're reviewing. That's just my take anyway. I actually haven't watched House of the Dragon yet. While we're on the topic of that, we may as well talk about it because, you brought it up there. I haven't watched it, and the reason I was staying away from it was because we all saw how Game of Thrones ended. Season 7 and 8 happened, and nothing can repair the damage of that. That is probably the biggest missed opportunity, the biggest waste of potential next to the Star Wars sequels of getting all the original cast back on screen together, all on screen together at the same time. And it's just, if they mention the White Walkers in the House of the Dragon, I'm like, well, Arya's just going to stab the Night King and everything's going to be fine. And because it ended so fucking terribly, I've lost all interest in watching a prequel, because why would I want to watch a prequel to something when the ending's going to be shit? And it's kind of the same thing now that I get with Star Wars. Especially with Mandalorian being set after Return of the Jedi, and it's kind of now filling that gap in the lead up to The Force Awakens. We saw what happened with the sequel trilogy, and it's just like, I don't care, because It's all going to end with Palpatine being resurrected and surviving the Death Star explosion, and he's chilling out on Exegol. That's how it's gonna. That's where it's gonna go. And watching any kind of prequel, knowing it's leading to that point, and all roads lead to there, it just kind of takes the edge away. Having said that, I have been more inclined to watch House of the Dragon now because genuinely I've heard fantastic things about it, and it just goes to show as well that, you know, for everyone going, oh well, you know, with the Rings of Power, everyone's a racist, everyone's a homophobe, and everything like that. You're not getting that criticism against House of the Dragon. I haven't seen anyone really say a negative word about House of the Dragon, to be honest. I think everyone's been pretty positive on that, saying it's just really fucking good television. It's interesting how you've got two massive fantasy TV shows, two fantasy novels, two fantasy worlds, a TV show happening at exactly the same time with rivaling companies with HBO and with Amazon. And yet everyone's just saying how shit Rings of Power is week to week. No one's saying a thing about House of the Dragon. I think that just goes to show. I think, granted, I haven't watched it, so I can't vouch for it 100%, but just from what I've seen from a lot of reviewers just saying that House of the Dragon is really damn good. Lord Oakenshield says Game of Thrones season 7 and 8 were jokes, but House of the Dragon is surprisingly good. You should give it a try. You know what? Maybe when season 1's all said and done, I'm assuming it's going to be 10 episodes again, like Game of Thrones was. When's all said and done, I might check it out, because I think I'm 3 episodes away from finishing Better Call Saul at the moment. Obviously, I've already bombed through Cobra Kai, so I am looking for a new TV show to watch. So, I don't know. Would you guys be interested in seeing reviews on House of the Dragon? Like, I could maybe bomb through them, and I could either do just like one big stream of catching up on episodes 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know how many we're up to at the moment. I think episode 4 just came out, wasn't it? I think it's pretty much in line with Rings of Power. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that, or maybe once season 1's finished, I could just review season 1 as a whole. I don't know if you guys would be interested in that, but do let me know, because it'd be nice to get to some TV stuff as well. I talk about a lot of films quite a lot of the time, just because films are a lot easier to watch than TV shows. Especially with something like Cobra Kai, it was 10 episodes and I had to take, 5 hours to watch it. But with a film, you're pretty much done in 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, and you can talk about it. You've got a beginning, middle, and end. But I would like to cover more TV show on the channel, TV shows, and, House of the Dragon certainly is a big show at the moment. There you go. Sam says, oh, you'd hate the fact they've made it woke. House Valyrian is now all race swapped. I did see that, and yeah, I'm not too keen on doing that, because again, it's just it dismantles the world that you're telling. But as I say, like, I haven't seen the show yet, so from what I've heard, even from channels that are super against woke culture, like Nerdrotic, he's mentioned that, but he doesn't seem to be hung up on that now. I think he was at the beginning, but I think probably the fact that it's a well-written show and it's actually probably a good show, that does kind of trump some of the negatives like that, where it does dismantle the world a little bit. And again, me saying that is nothing against the actor. This is just me coming from a lore standpoint and a world building standpoint. And I want to be clear with that, because people like to take things out of context. Not necessarily saying that you do, Sam, but people in the past take things out of context. So I'm just being 100% clear. And it's kind of sad that I have to be that 100% clear. But we live in a day and age now where you have to cover your own arse like pretty much all of the time, because there's a lot of fucking snowflakes out there. Hey, Lord Oakenshield's down for it. Yeah, if I get some free time, I'll give it a shot. But it's just, isn't it going to be really depressing though if once House of the Dragon's all said and done, is all finished, and let's say it ends really fantastically well, it's just going to be really depressing to then go back to Game of Thrones and just seeing the wasted potential of that ending. I think it's just going to make it worse. I think HBO just need to get the original cast back together and go, like, you know what, we're just going to remake seasons 7 and 8 because we fucked up. Sam says, I laughed when Critical Drinker changed every House of Dragon title to say it's great, not crap, as he put originally. Yeah, here's the thing, like, reviewers that I trust, like the Critical Drinker, like a lot of people. I follow a lot of review channels on YouTube. I don't think I've seen a single one say anything bad about House of the Dragon. I think the only discrepancy I've seen is what you mentioned there about House Valyrian being race swapped. But apart from that, like everything else, it's just say it's damn good television, damn good writing. Lord Oakenshield says, I don't mind the race swap for I don't know this character. Corlys Valerian. Corlys. Because the actor is a fucking badass and racism doesn't really seem to be a thing in Westeros. Yeah, I guess you could agree with that. It's just, it'd be if like in Winterfell, which is depicted as, I would say, how would you say Winterfell is depicted? It's kind of like a medieval kind of time period, like medieval England, like Northern England, like York, just somewhere like that. It would be really weird if you had like token guy just walking through Winterfell. That would be, you'd go, hang on a minute, this doesn't make sense. I think I'd be like, if I was watching that, I'd be like, what, who, what, how? But when you get to like King's Landing, which itself is very multicultural, absolutely, and you go across the water and you get to Pentos and everything. But I think if you've got like a clearly defined house, that's where the discrepancy would kick in there, where I'd be like, well, hang on, this doesn't match. Isn't Martin involved in House of Dragons? Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, he's involved in that when he should be involved in actually, writing book 6 and 7. Please and thank you. Leave the TV show to other people to do while you actually finish your mythology. That would be very nice. Anyway, let's get back to the Rings of Power. We've gone on like a 45-minute tangent there, which is great, and I love this. I love it's the highlight of my Friday. I love talking about this stuff. So yeah. Anyway, okay. We last left off at Theo going into the village to get supplies, and they get ambushed by orcs. And there's another moment where they really try desperately to recreate a moment from the Lord of the Rings, and the orc pulls the dagger out and licks the blood off it. It does the thing that Lurtz does. It's just, it's like, I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to like iconography and certain phrases and certain words in there. And then Theo hides down a well. And he's hiding in the well at first, and I think doesn't one of the orcs like throw like a bucket in there or something, and it hits him on the head, and he goes like, "Ow!" And the orc's like, "Fucking hell!" And it just like swarms onto the well, and he looks in, and there's no one in there, so it loses interest and walks off. But it would clearly still be an earshot, and if it could hear someone go like, "Oh!" Suddenly Theo just bursts out of the water because he's submerging himself under the water to keep hidden, and then he just bursts out of the water really loudly and go like, it's like that orc would still be in earshot, so wouldn't it just come straight back to the well? But apparently not. Apparently orcs have selective hearing. We move on. Okay, now we go to Khazad-dûm. Although before that, when it came to, it was episode 2, wasn't it? The big thing that everyone talked about, and it's worth talking about, is just the geographical leaps in time that it must take. Because between scenes, Elrond and Celebrimbor just fucking walked with no horses, no provisions, no nothing, almost like it was a Sunday afternoon stroll. Walked from Eregion to Khazad-dûm. And the camera pans, it shows you how far that distance is from Eregion to Khazad-dûm. And just in the next scene, they're there. They're there at the doors. They don't look travel worn. As I said, they don't have an entourage with them. They don't have any provisions. They don't have any horses or anything like that. They just stroll up to the main gates. Elrond's let in, and he says, I'm going to be here for a few days. So I'm like, is Celebrimbor just going to wait outside? If anything, Celebrimbor should have been the one who was let in, because he was the one who carved the doorway. The doors of Durin, like the Elvish runes and everything, that was constructed by Celebrimbor. So why isn't he let in? Like, shouldn't he be the envoy? Because he's the friend of the dwarves and not Elrond. It's weird. So I was there like, is Elrond, sorry, is Celebrimbor just going to wait outside Khazad-dûm? Is he going to have to walk back to Eregion? Like, how does this work? And there's no sense of time, because the time it would have taken them from, to walk there would have been, shit, I don't know, I'd say a couple of months maybe to get there. I don't really know, like a good few weeks of daily travel non-stop, or, maybe a month or two. And then there's another moment in the episode today that's like that, because we start in Eregion. We've got Elrond and Celebrimbor talking with each other. It's a really, really small scene. And then I swear we cut, and then Elrond's back in Khazad-dûm, and I'm watching it, and maybe I missed something. So if you guys picked up on this as well, let me know, because I may have missed, I may have misheard something, but I don't think it was a flashback to Eregion before they set out to Khazad-dûm. So now it looks like Elrond went to Khazad-dûm, spent a bit of time with Prince Durin, left and travelled back to Eregion to have a quick 20-second, 30-second scene with Celebrimbor, and then travelled back to Khazad-dûm, because the shit happens in a cut. There's no montage, there's no cut to the map or anything like that. It smash cuts and he's back at Khazad-dûm, and it was really weird to me. Oh, Sam's got to take off. He says, I have to start work. We'll finish this video tonight. Keep it up. Thanks, man. No, I appreciate you jumping in, and thanks for the debates as well. It's all good. It's all good, man. So yeah, hope to see you on the next one, because I'll be back here every Friday talking Rings of Power. So no, thanks for the chat tonight, man. Thanks for tuning in and sharing your opinions as well. I do appreciate it. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So then, Nerdrotic mentioned this, and he made a really great point that we still haven't seen the dwarven children. Disa and Durin's children. We saw them playing in helmets in the background in episode 2, and now we hear them playing but off camera. And he says it's weird now. It's like the filmmakers are intentionally hiding the children, and it's strange. Like, why aren't you showing the children? But they have some kind of nursery rhyme and everything. Elrond calls Disa out, thinking that Prince Durin's up to no good, or he's doing something secret and he's keeping something hidden from him, and he wants to get to the bottom of it, what it is. And Disa tells him a lie, but Elrond pretty much with his it's like, Elrond, what do your elf eyes see? And apparently they can lip read from fucking ages away. And he learns that Durin is toiling in the old mine or something like that. And to get to the old mine, he just approaches a wall and just taps on the wall to this nursery rhyme that he heard. But there's no context to that. There's no reason that he would know that was the password to get into the mine. There's no setup for knowing that he'd have to knock on the rock in that exact way that you'd have to knock with every syllable. Like, it's just like, did he read the script too? Anyway, he gets in. It actually reminded me of Hagrid when he goes to Diagon Alley and he has to tap the bricks, and then all of a sudden it opens up. Tar Elenian Maronway says it's 100 miles as the crow flies. Okay, so 100 miles. At a push, you could probably... Well, this is the thing. If they were on horseback, they'd get there a lot quicker. But it's just the way that it's edited. The fact is, it would take time for them to travel there. But then when we cut to another character storyline, we haven't had that time jump for their character. That's happening immediately afterwards. So the whole timeline's completely fucked. Yeah, so it'd be like several days. Absolutely. But we don't get that several days added onto all the other storylines at the same time. So he meets with Durin, and Durin makes him swear an oath on the rock that if he breaks his promise and tells anyone, another living soul, of what he's seen today, of what they're mining, then him and his family will be forever cursed. And he makes the pledge, swears on his own family that he won't tell anyone. And of course, it's Mithril. And here we go. This is the member berries part. You're right. You're absolutely right here, because this was like painful member berries. And they're thinking of what to call this thing. And I think Prince Durin says, like, it means such and such. The name would be Mithraud. And then Elrond goes, no, it would be called, dramatic pause, dramatic zoom in, Mithril. And it's like, yeah, we watched Lord of the Rings as well. We know what Mithril is. I was half expecting him to go into the whole spiel, like as light as a feather and as hard as dragon scales. So they're clearly setting up the Balrog with this. We saw it in the trailer. I don't like how far ahead they've moved the Balrog. As far as I can remember from when I was reading about the lore, it's actually Durin the Sixth that discovered the Balrog, which is why it's called Durin's Bane. They also haven't quite grasped how the whole lineage of the Durins works. You wouldn't have two Durins alive at the same time. One, Durin, the spirit of Durin is a reincarnated spirit, or so the dwarves believe, that when one passes away, Durin will then be resurrected in another dwarf at some point. So you wouldn't have King Durin III and Prince Durin IV. And they're going to do the Balrog. Like, I know by the end of this series, we're going to have the Balrog done. Even in this episode, you've got, like the cave-in, you've got the earthquake, you've got the earth being disrupted, and they've said that, this has been happening quite often. It happens. It's the Balrog. They delve too greedily and too deep. But to me, it's just happening way too quick. It's way too soon for the Balrog. But again, we've got to get those member bearers in there. People of the Balrog. The Balrog's really fucking cool. And this is where I talked about that, considering this is like a really high-budgeted show, you never really get that on screen. There's loads of moments where we could see like a genuine dramatic character moment or a enthralling action sequence or something like that. And it's when the cave-ins happened and Durin's like, there are dwarves down there. There's 4 men down there and I'm going to go in and save them. And Elrond's like, no, you can't. And he's like, I must. And he goes in. And I'm expecting, Elrond to like follow him and we get to develop their friendship and how they're brothers in arms and how they're both selfless and how they'll, save people. And hell, maybe even Elrond saving a couple of dwarves down the mine would help how some of the dwarves view him, in the rest of Khazad-dûm, and might even help elven-dwarven relations at the time. But no, we just cut. We cut, and then eventually we cut back, and we've got Disa, who's like, oh, and she's like, doing this hymn, this like gospel choir kind of song to aid a prayer to the trapped miners. And then Durin just rocks up, and he's just like, oh yeah, they're all alive, they're all fine, we got out. It's just like, well, it would have been nice to have seen that. Like, we could have made that an actual scene instead of spending time elsewhere, wherever we are. I will continue to say, though, that although I still have a lot of problems with it, the Khazad-dûm stuff and the Dwarven stuff in general is by far the most interesting stuff in the series so far. I thought that with episode 2. I still think that now. I actually really like the actor who plays King Durin, and I actually quite like the actor who plays Prince Durin as well. I think they're both very good. There's a lot of discrepancies with the lore, which I don't agree with, and the way that some of the things handled, it does feel very pantomime. But from an acting standpoint, I think they're the 2 most solid actors. I'd say King Durin, Prince Durin, and the guy who plays Elendil so far are the best 3 things in the show. Which isn't saying much because, as I said, the lore and everything's just completely fucked. But if I were to pick positive, then they're actually pretty damn good. Tara Lenny and Miranwe says the Balrog comes into it in 1981 of the Third Age. Yeah, exactly. So the shameless plug right now, and I tend to do this because we're talking about Lord of the Rings. I did a fan edit of the Hobbit films. I finished it last December. I am gearing up to do a third version of it, though, at some point when I get some free time. But you can check it out now. I've got links to it in the description down below. Please do go and check it out. If I've taken the Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy and condensed it down to one film with the goal of making it closer to the book and to be more lore accurate. I've been watching The Rings of Power so far, and I've been thinking, would it even be possible to do a fan edit of this and make it anywhere good? Anywhere kind of half decent? And I don't think you can. I think it's just fundamentally fucked. Like from a lore standpoint, and from an everything standpoint, it's just totally fucked. I don't think you can do anything with it. There has been an interesting edit that I have found on YouTube where someone's deep faked Kate Blanchett's face onto younger Galadriel, and it actually looks really, really good. Obviously, even if you did that, though, the characterization of Galadriel is still totally wrong. I don't know. I'm going to have to watch season 1, in its entirety and see if you could cobble anything together with it. So far, excuse me. So far, I think the only thing that you could really do with it is the kind of prologue sequence at the beginning and try and make that a little bit more lore faithful and cut some extra things in with it. That's been the only halfway decent bit to me so far. So I don't know. I take on the challenge, but I just don't think anything can be done with it, in all honesty. So we cut to Galadriel, who, from an act of sedition, has been imprisoned in or is being escorted. No, is she already in the jail cell at this point? Yeah, she's already in the jail cell at this point, and they've come to release her, I think, or to take her somewhere and to take her to the king, I think. And this is interesting as well. So, or is this the bit where it goes into the Palantir? I forgot how it is, but the point is that Galadriel gets imprisoned, and then Ar-Pharazôn goes down there to bring her out of there. We do learn that Miriel isn't, in fact, the queen. She's just a queen regent, and it's her father, who looks nothing like her at all. So the gene pool isn't very strong in this family, it seems. We get the impression that he's dying, or he's got, Alzheimer's, memory loss or something like that. He's weak and he's dying. Which is Tar Palantir, I think. I think that's the name of her father. He's a member of the faithful, and his descendants, I keep saying descendants, his ancestors were against the Valar, and he was actually one who wanted to return to the old ways and be part of the faithful and worship the Valar again, and try and correct Numenor's way of life, essentially, which is also a sentiment that's echoed by his daughter Miriel, until she was forcibly married to Ar-Pharazôn, who was a complete maniac and ultimately was one of the deciding factors in the dooms in the doom of Numenor itself. So I think time-wise, Tar Palantir died in 2355 of the Second Age, I think, if I remember rightly. I think the fall of Numenor happened 64 or 65 years after that fact. So we've got 60 years to cover until it's meant to happen, but I've got the impression they're just going to really truncate the timeline. I think we're going to get the Balrog this series, and Khazad-dûm's just going to be completely destroyed to how we see it in the Lord of the Rings films in this first season. Apparently the Rings of Power aren't created in this series, and apparently the forge that Celebrimbor wants to build, that we think is for the Rings of Power, apparently it's not for the Rings of Power. The thing he wants to create there isn't the Rings of Power just yet. So we've still got a long time to wait on that. I think season 2 is probably going to be the fall of Numenor. And then 3 is going to be... I think Nerdrotic mentioned this, but I think he's absolutely right. I think he predicted that 3 is going to be the creation of the Rings of Power. And then your last 2 series are probably going to be the Last Alliance or something like that, or building up to the Last Alliance, which will then lead you into the prologue sequence, I guess, from the Lord of the Rings. If this indeed is meant to take place in the same world as Peter Jackson's films. So Galadriel's being let out of her jail cell, and bearing in mind Numenor's meant to be, the physical peak of man. They're part immortal as well. They're insanely long life. They're well built. They're all like 7 foot. The elite guards that are escorting Chancellor Pharazôn through the city. And Galadriel just instantly beats them, just makes light work of them, throws them in a jail cell like it's some kind of comedy skit. And I'm like, these are meant to be your elite guards of Numenor. Like, what are we witnessing right now? And again, it's just a ploy to make Galadriel look amazing and powerful and super amazing at everything. And it's just... yeah, anyway. So we've got the Palantir scene as well, which Galadriel basically just sees a vision in there of the fall of Numenor again, pretty much using exactly the same footage that we saw earlier. But one thing that some eagle-eyed viewer did notice, because I'm part of like a whole bunch of Lord of the Rings collectors groups and Lord of the Rings forums and everything on Facebook. And I will say, actually, one thing that I have hated about this show is just like Star Wars with The Last Jedi and the sequel trilogy, the divide that it's created in the fan base. It's actually made me want to leave a whole bunch of the groups because everyone's just like arguing constantly, and it's completely divided it, which is a real shame. But one eagle-eyed viewer saw that there is a painted Narsil in the background that you can find in the Palantir scene. They have literally taken like a prop sword right there, painted it gold, and yeah, they've put that sword there. So now I'm thinking, okay, so you've got Narsil. So is that meant to be Elendil's sword that he will eventually have? Is this just meant to be what all Numenorian weaponry is meant to look like? If that's the case, then that just makes Narsil feel really less special, doesn't it? If it's just kind of like off an assembly line of swords that all look identical to each other. Ultimately, at the end of the episode, this was funny as well. They decide to send Galadriel away to Middle-earth, and then it's like, the big twist at the end is that, no, but actually Miriel and a whole bunch of soldiers from Numenor are going to go and help her. Able-bodied men and women of Numenor, and again, I'm watching it going, women don't do fucking battle in Middle-earth. No, especially not in Numenor. It just doesn't happen. So now you're going to have like the Battle of the Last Alliance, and it's a last alliance of men and elves, but it's going to be, there was actually 50% women in there as well. It's just female empowerment, and they're just going about it in completely the wrong way, and it just breaks the law, and it's absolutely dumb. And it's Nerdrotics mentioned this as well. It's going to be really fucking weird because you have all of these women that are doing battle left, right, and center. Galadriel, is basically like Joan of Arc. You've got all these female soldiers at Numenor now, but then by the time you get to the Third Age, women are they don't do battle. They're not allowed to do battle. And it just makes Eowyn's moment, it just takes all the magic away from that moment, which is a pivotal moment, is a huge moment for her character. It's going to mean nothing now, because not that this is what annoys me. This series is like half in and half out. It doesn't know whether it wants to be an outright prequel to Peter Jackson's movies, or it's doing its own thing, and it's doing shit that contradicts the law. But then you've got a Balrog that looks exactly like the Peter Jackson one, and then you're putting Narsil in the background, and you're getting stuff like Howard Shore back and everything. All of these, like crew that ties it back to the films, but we're doing our own. It just makes no sense. So either do one or the other. Either make it an outright prequel to the movies, or do your own thing and just make it completely original. Then I guess the only other thing to mention as well is Theo gets back to the village. He brings the provisions, and then this creepy old man sees the mark of Sauron on his arm, and he's basically like a servant of Sauron. He's waiting for the devil to return. Basically, it's like, what do you know of Sauron? And we need to maintain our strength, lad. He's returned until his return. I'm like, okay. So Sauron's got sleeper agents in the Southlands. I'm like, okay. And I'm guessing that's where you're going to have... people said that he looked like Eminem, or she. I don't know if it's a she or a he. It's the gender-neutral priestess woman with a bald head that we've seen in the trailers and some still images. I think they're going to be some kind of like cult to Sauron, some kind of like faithful servants of his. Maybe what this old guy's a part of. I'm not sure. That's going to be my prediction anyway. And I think that takes us to the end of the episode. Yeah, the end of the episode is where Galadriel and Miriel are about to, I think Nerdrotic mentioned it and said Thelma and Louise this shit. And they're both going to head to Middle-earth and kick some ass together. Hashtag girl power. Woo! That's the end. That's the end of episode 4. We made it. We made it, guys. Just over 2 hours. Wow, Jesus. It is 1:15 in the AM, and I start work at 9 AM. So I need to be up in just under 7 hours. That's going to be fun. But it's all good because this has been another excellent chat. I'm so glad that we've had loads of people tuned in tonight. We've had even more people commenting as well. This is great. Seeing some new commenters, seeing some new faces tonight. And the beauty of it is as well, whether it's people agreeing with me or having a completely different opinion and, not afraid to argue their opinion as well. And I'm down for that. As I always say, like, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. I want this to be a space where people can be free to voice their opinion on things. I don't want to cancel people. I don't want being a victim of cancel culture myself. I don't want that. I don't agree with that shit. And, we're all Tolkien fans at the end of the day. I don't want to get too hippie and, hippy dippy about it, but it's like, one love. We all love the same thing. Whether we agree or don't agree, inherently we love Tolkien's works or we love the films. But I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that's tuned in for either all of this thing or a bit of this thing. I love doing this. This is why I love doing it. And it's great that we can do this. So thank you. If you are watching and you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do. If you enjoyed my waffling on for over 2 hours, for more movie reviews, television reviews now as well, discussions and live streams. I'm definitely streaming a lot more now. Getting back into the swing of things and looking to build this community, and just hearing more from you guys too. Give me a follow on Twitter as well. As I said, next week I've avoided Star Wars for quite some time, but we've got the Andor series starting on good old Disney Plus, which is just a seal of quality at this point, isn't it? That's starting on Wednesday, and I'm cautiously optimistic. I've been burnt by Star Wars so many times. But out of Disney's takeover of Star Wars, the one film that I actually don't mind watching and thought was actually pretty okay was Rogue One. I saw that a lot of times at the cinema, and this is a prequel to Rogue One. And there might be some good stuff in there. There might be bad. And it could go either way. So I'll be reviewing that on Wednesday. But before that, I will be back on Tuesday. We're almost finished with the Bond films now, including this one. We've got 3 to go. And Skyfall's the big one. So I'm going to be streaming live on Tuesday, the 20th of September, at the slightly later time of 11:30 p.m. British Standard Time. I'm going to be talking about Skyfall. I will actually be at the cinema for that one, so that's going to be good. Unfortunately, I missed Quantum of Solace. But yeah, if you're a Bond fan, there's a whole playlist there now that's almost complete with all 25 Bond films. The last one I did was Quantum of Solace, which, as I said, I didn't get to check out at the cinema. But do go and check that out. In the TV realm of things, I've also got a review out there for Cobra Kai Season 5. So if you love your TV, if you love Cobra Kai, and we did actually mention that today on the stream, do go and check that out as well. And now, actually, as promised from last week, with the Rings of Power, I do have a playlist exclusively for the Rings of Power now. So I've got all 4 episodes in there at the moment that you can check out in a very nice, easy-to-find playlist on the channel. In the meantime, if you're just discovering this video now, or if you haven't voiced your opinions proper just yet, let me know what you think of the Rings of Power. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you hate this episode? Are you still kind of on the fence with it? Anything regarding the Rings of Power, please do drop me a comment. Let me know. I love chatting to you guys, and I always reply to every single comment. This has been brilliant. So I'm going to sign off tonight anyway, because I feel like I've talked you all to death. But big thank you to everyone who stayed tuned. Stay excellent, stay positive to each other, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Oh, actually, no, Sunday. Tune in on Sunday. I've got a very exciting unboxing video, and it is Middle-earth related. It is Hobbit and Lord of the Rings related. It's going to be fun. I can't wait to do that. I love my unboxing videos, and it means I get a brand new sword, which is all good. So check on my Twitter for details on that when I'm going to go live, because I don't know what time that's going to be, but that is going to be on Sunday. Look forward to that. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everyone.